Chronic diarrhea and chronic vomiting in dogs or cats? Does it ever actually stop? Or is this just something that stays forever? And is it really just a sensitive stomach? In my video series about chronic diseases, today we're talking about a problem that affects a huge number of animals and is often incredibly frustrating for owners. Chronic gastrointestinal issues. Many people think when their pet has diarrhea or vomiting, it must have eaten something wrong. And yes, that can be true, but when it keeps happening over and over again, there's often more going on. And that's exactly what we're going to look at now. There isn't just one single cause for chronic vomiting and chronic diarrhea. There are multiple possible reasons. For example, chronic inflammation of the intestines, food intolerances, an imbalance of the gut microbiome, chronic gastritis, which is an inflammation of the stomach lining, or inflammation of the pancreas. And those are just a few examples. In many cases, gastrointestinal problems are not caused by just one single issue. Often it's a combination of multiple factors. Possible combinations could be, for example, a sensitive, irritated gut combined with additional emotional stress. That reminds me of a situation from practice, actually. So, a veterinarian had a dog with recurring diarrhea, not constant, but typically chronic. Sometimes better, then worse again, and without a clear trigger. At some point, she noticed something. The digestive problems occurred more often in stressful situations. Not every time, but noticeably often. And that's when she realized the dog was extremely sensitive to changes and also to the emotional state of herself. At the same time, this veterinarian was preparing for a major conference. The presentation was still weeks away, so there wasn't any obvious acute stress. But then, one day, she comes home after a normal workday, a bit tired, right, slightly tense, but nothing she would have considered as very stressful or stress-labeled. The dog, who normally greets her at the door, immediately runs straight into the corner of the apartment. And then it happened. An explosive episode of severe diarrhea. What's interesting is the apartment had been completely clean before. No signs of diarrhea, no earlier accidents, nothing. And in that moment she realizes, my dog is extremely sensitive to stress and it shows directly through the gastrointestinal tract. And at the same time she has to admit, I must be much more stressed than I actually realized. Maybe you've experienced something similar as well. Before an exam, a presentation, or an important event, you name it, you suddenly feel nauseous. Sometimes you even have to rush to the bathroom. That's a completely normal reaction of the nervous system. And that's exactly how you could imagine it within the dog. It reacted to the emotional tension of its owner, and that stress manifested in the gastrointestinal system. This story is meant to show you one thing. Chronic diarrhea or recurring vomiting is often a complex issue. It's very possible that gastrointestinal problems are caused by a combination of different factors, and that's exactly what makes treatment more challenging and sometimes requires a shifting in thinking. In traditional Chinese medicine, these cases are viewed from a different perspective. It doesn't just ask, what diagnosis does that specific animal have? But more importantly, why is the animal showing those kind of symptoms? Which system within the body is out of balance and why? A TCM practitioner therefore doesn't look at just an affected organ, the gastrointestinal tract, in isolation, I mean. Instead, they consider additional influencing factors. A distinction is made between external and internal factors. External factors include things like bacteria or viruses that enter the body from the outside and cause disease. Internal factors include the emotional state of the animal, for example, whether stress might be present or not. Second, nutrition. Third, lifestyle, such as overload of chronic tension due to certain living conditions. What's important is these factors are not viewed separately but in their interaction. And based on that, an individualized treatment strategy is developed. For example, if stress is identified as a key trigger for gastrointestinal symptoms, treatment can include several levels. Acupuncture to regulate the nervous system and support gastrointestinal function, Chinese herbal formulas to reduce the stress response, as well as management in daily life, meaning identifying and reducing specific stress triggers in the animal's environment. Did you notice something about this treatment approach? Exactly. In this example, no herbs were used that only targets the gastrointestinal tract directly. Instead, the focus is primarily on plants that influence the body's stress response. And this is a key difference. In TCM, not only the symptom is treated, but above all, the underlying cause. And now I'd love to hear about your experience. Have you ever had a pet with chronic diarrhea or vomiting, where you felt there was more going on than just, for example, a simple gastrointestinal infection? How did the symptoms present and how did you handle it? Feel free to share your story in the comments below. What you should take away from this video is that both chronic vomiting and chronic diarrhea are not always simple conditions. They may indicate that multiple issues are interacting and affecting the entire organism in a complex way. That's why patients with these symptoms should always be evaluated and treated by a qualified professional. And at this point, Francesca has one more important message for you. Francesca, come over here and tell us once more. And before you go, I have something very important to say to you. If you have an animal at home that is suffering from a disease, please don't just rely on these kind of videos because they are just for educational purposes only. If you have an animal at home that is suffering from a disease, please take it to a vet that the vet can have a look on it and diagnose it accordingly. It is very important that your animal gets a treatment plan especially designed for its disease. So, I hope this video gave you an interesting insight in how chronic diseases can be approached from a TCM perspective. If you found this video helpful, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. And that's it for today. I'm already looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care and see you soon.